We're here at ICAST 2014 with Jay Yelas in the Yamamoto booth, and I was just talking to Jay about how he got started in bass fishing, and Jay's got a few stories he wants to share with us.
Terry, you and I both started fishing on the same lake.
Yeah.
How about that? Lake Kachuma in Southern California at night. Boy, that was back in my high school days. I was living in Santa Barbara, and Lake Kachuma was right over the mountain. We'd go over there on the weekends. My buddy and I would. So we'd go camp out and fish on Saturdays and on the weekends. So when I first started fishing, I went with my dad. My dad was not a bass fisher. He loved trout fishing. He liked salmon fish and stuff. But we had a little. I'd been expressing an interest to go fishing, so my dad bought this 13-foot John boat with a 4-horsepower motor. We'd go out to Lake Kachuma, and we'd go trolling, or we would anchor, and I remember fish with Cheeseballs, fish trout. And so this one day, we were back in the back of Kachuma Bay. Remember where that is? Straight across from the marina. We're in the back. It was like February. We're anchored, and we're fishing Cheeseballs. You just throw it out, let it sit on the bottom, wait and prop your rod against the side of the boat. We're just sitting there waiting for a fish to come along and bite. And we see this boat coming in the Kachuma Bay. It's a bass boat.
About Bernie Sherman.
I don't remember who it was, but I remember they were having so much fun, and they come flying in about 50 miles an hour, and they turn the motor off, and they both jump up on the front deck. Two guys, they throw their trolling motor in, they're going down the shoreline, casting and reeling, fishing crankbaits. And all of a sudden, a guy catches one, and they get all excited, and they net it, and they're like, woohoo! And all the while, we're sitting there in that John boat with our cheese ball, sitting out there in the middle, waiting for a trout to come along. My buddy and I looked at each other and said, next weekend we come back, we're going to go do that. And so the next weekend we went to Hook, Line and Sinker tackle shop in Santa Barbara.
Right there at the base of San Marcos Pass.
Yeah, right there. We went there. I think it's still there today. Different owners. Gene Cedarfield's daughter owned it back then. And we went in there. My buddy and I each bought one hellbender. Back then, this was back in like 1980, 81. Yep, Walker Stuff company. I remember I got a crawdad model, my buddy got a frog model. So the next weekend we went out to Lake Kachuma. I didn't have a trolling motor or anything. We'd take turns rowing, and one guy would cast, and that crankbait, the other guy would row. We'd do that for about 20 minutes, and we'd get tired, we'd switch. This is how I got started. That's what you asked me, how you got started. And I remember the first time ever I went bass fishing was that day. It was like in late February, and I remember catching like what I thought was this monster bass, and I didn't even know there was a size limit. I was like 10th grade, 15 years old. I strung it up. I thought it was it looked bigger than the trout we've been catching. And my buddy had caught like a 3-pounder on his frog, colored hellbender. And I remember we were fishing that afternoon, the game warden stopped us and checked. And he said, there's a minimum size on these bass. They've got to be 12 inches long. And I started worrying my fish would be big enough. But he took my fish and he measured. It was like 12 and a half inches. So I was like, that would have been an auspicious beginning to the professional bass fishing career. The first bass he ever caught was a short. He got a ticket. So that's how we got started. And then we started coming back every weekend bass fishing. So next thing you know, I bought a trolling motor, and then we bought a bigger motor for the boat, and we started buying all this tackle, rods and reels, and lures, and my tackle supply started to balloon out like all that happens to all bass fishermen. And then I met Bill Cedar, who was the owner of that tackle shop. Gene Cedar was the owner of the shop. It was her dad, was Bill. He was retired. He'd fish Lake Kachuma like 5 days a week back then. And then when he wasn't fishing, he'd hang out in the back room of the tackle shop. And I got to meet him, and we started talking and telling fish stories. And he kind of became my fishing mentor. He taught me how to fish, basically. And I would go up there, and what a wealth of experience that was. And what a blessing for me, knowing nothing about bass fishing. I mean, this was 1980. and you didn't have all the internet. There was no internet back then. There might have been one fishing show on TV or maybe two.
Yeah.
And so it was really hard to learn the sport back then. And Bill took me under his wing. At that time, he was probably 60, 65 years old, retired, fishing the same lake 5 days a week. And just a wealth of information. I learned so much from him. And that kind of laid the foundation for my career to have a great mentor like that. And then I went to college. We started fishing team tournaments when I was in college at Oregon State. And then after I graduated from college, I started fishing professionally. The first couple of years I stayed out west. Fished all the tournaments on the Colorado River Basin and northern California, Arizona, Lake Roosevelt, places like that.
You were Redman Angler of the Year.
Yeah, 1988 and 89. And then after that, for 2 years, I started fishing bass. And the first tournament I fished, I drove from the West Coast all the way to upstate New York. It's like 45 hours to one tournament. And then I bombed out and I had to drive 45 hours home. Something's got to change here. So my wife and I moved to Texas in 1990 to get closer to all that. And then it just took off. And here we are 25 years later and still doing it. Been fortunate and blessed to make a career doing something I love to do.
That's awesome. Well, Jay, thank you so much. Yeah.
I love telling those early stories.
Yeah.
It's fun to relive that stuff.
Definitely. Well, thank you, sir.
Yeah, you bet.
We appreciate it.